It's a question that feels increasingly urgent today, doesn't it? When we talk about American history, do we really understand all of it? And specifically, thinking about Black history, how deep does that understanding actually go for white Americans? Today, we're doing a deep dive looking at a whole range of powerful sources to explore exactly that, the current state of understanding Black history across America. And, this isn't just some academic thing, it's really a critical lens for looking at the cultural, the social, the political fabric of the country. Think of this as your shortcut to getting well informed on a topic that's just absolutely essential. And we've got some facts here that might genuinely surprise you.
And that's exactly right. Understanding this isn't just important, it's really paramount. It goes way beyond just, knowing dates or names from a history book. It's about building real communal harmony, fostering the kind of dialogues we need for reconciliation in such a diverse society. I mean, when you really consider the deep, lasting impact of huge historical events, things like slavery, segregation, the civil rights movement, you just can't ignore how they continue to shape experiences for all Americans today, Black and white. So having a comprehensive grasp, it's absolutely essential if you want to understand the systemic issues that are still playing out in our communities.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this a bit. One of the first things that really jumped out at us from the material we reviewed is just how vital understanding Black history is seen to be. It's noted as this profound contribution to the whole American story, the broader narrative. And what's really fascinating is how the sources consistently emphasize both the struggles and the achievements, not just focusing on one side.
Precisely, yeah. You look at figures like Frederick Douglass or Harriet Tubman. I mean, these individuals literally shaped the course of freedom and justice in America. Or think about the cultural explosion of the Harlem Renaissance. These aren't just like minor events. They're crucial dynamic chapters in the American story. And for white Americans, understanding this isn't just about learning facts. It's about developing a much greater awareness of things like privilege and systemic inequality.
Wow.
What the research really drives home is that this knowledge, when you truly absorb it, helps pave the way towards a more equitable society for everyone. And fundamentally, it's also about appreciating the ongoing resilience, and the huge, often overlooked contributions of Black Americans. Critically engaging with the past like this helps us challenge those old stereotypes and ultimately foster more empathy, more connection.
So it's really about seeing these figures and movements not just as things that happened back then, but as active forces that shaped the entire American narrative. That shift sounds, well, vital for a real deep dive, doesn't it? But okay, to really get the ongoing implications, we need that historical foundation. Our sources give us this really powerful, concise journey through the key moments that helps connect those dots.
They absolutely do. And it starts quite starkly back in the early 17th century, with the arrival of enslaved Africans forced into labor, mainly on plantations in the South. And this wasn't short-lived. We're talking about a brutal system that lasted nearly 250 years, characterized by just unimaginable dehumanization, violence, and systemic oppression that affected generation after generation. Then the Civil War ends, and in 1865, the 13th Amendment legally abolishes slavery, a massive pivotal transition. But as history shows, their struggles were incredibly far from over. You then have the Reconstruction era, roughly 1865 to 1877, and there were genuine efforts, though often really challenged, to integrate freed slaves into society, grant them civil rights. We're talking the 14th and 15th Amendments here, aiming for citizenship, voting rights. But tragically, this hopeful period was pretty quickly followed by the rise of Jim Crow laws, which set up this rigid system of racial segregation that stubbornly held on for decades, basically undoing a lot of Reconstruction's promise. Moving into the early 20th century, you see the emergence of really influential figures, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, shaping the whole conversation around civil rights and Black empowerment. And then, of course, the 1920s bring the Harlem Renaissance. What a transformative cultural movement that was. It wasn't just a moment. It was this incredible celebration of Black identity artists, writers, musicians who profoundly influenced American culture overall. And finally, you get to the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 60s, a really decisive turning point, leading to huge milestones. Think Brown v. Board of Education in '54, desegregating schools legally, the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964, and of course the leadership of people like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, iconic symbols of that relentless fight for justice and equality. Taking all these critical events together, well, it provides absolutely crucial insight into the issues African Americans still face today.
And when you hear those names, it's more than just history, isn't it? It feels like a testament to courage that still echoes. It really makes you wonder how much of that core message we've all actually internalized. So, okay, with all that crucial context laid out, Why is it apparently still so difficult for many people to really grasp this history?
The material seems to point towards rampant misconceptions, almost like a parallel, distorted narrative has taken root.
That's true, unfortunately. One really common myth, for example, is this idea that Black history somehow just starts with slavery, which is such a profound oversimplification. It fundamentally distorts the picture. It completely ignores the rich, diverse cultures in Africa before colonization, and it effectively erases significant contributions by Black individuals throughout all of American history before, during, and after slavery. What the sources really stress here is that reducing the story just to that one tragic element, well, it diminishes that incredible spirit of resilience, but it also actively blocks a full understanding of their ongoing contributions and power in shaping America. That is a huge one, and it feels like it's pretty deeply ingrained for a lot of people. But can you give some examples? What are some of those rich pre-colonial histories the sources mention that just get completely wiped out if we start the story there?
Exactly. Well, you miss out on understanding powerful West African empires like Ghana, Mali, Songhai. These were places with sophisticated trade networks, advanced centers of learning like universities in Timbuktu, and incredibly rich artistic traditions. These were complex societies with histories stretching back centuries before the transatlantic slave trade even began. If your narrative only starts with people arriving in chains, you lose that whole foundation of culture, of ingenuity. Another common misconception is perceiving Black Americans primarily, or even solely, as victims. Now, obviously, it's undeniable that systemic racism and oppression have had a profound impact, of course. But that viewpoint completely overlooks the incredible resilience, the agency, the achievements. When you celebrate figures like Frederick Douglass, who bought his own freedom and became this powerful abolitionist voice, or Harriet Tubman risking her life again and again on the Underground Railroad, it highlights the true complexity. It's about recognizing that Black history isn't just defined by struggle. It's defined by immense perseverance and triumph, too. And then the sources also really point to how damaging stereotypes about Black culture are. They actively hinder genuine understanding. These narrow, often negative views distort how Black Americans are seen, both historically and today. Relying on these kinds of oversimplified images contributes to erasing critical historical events, like the intellectual and artistic vibrancy of the Harlem Renaissance, or the complex, varied strategies used during the Civil Rights Movement. And understanding those is fundamental to grasping the real breadth of Black experiences in America.
Which naturally raises the question, if these misconceptions are out there, how exactly is Black history being taught in American schools? The material we looked at highlights some pretty significant educational disparities that might be, well, part of the root cause here.
Oh, absolutely. The way Black history is taught in U.S. schools is undeniably complex and, yeah, often pretty contentious. Curricula just vary so widely across the country. And that significantly impacts the depth, the accuracy of the Black historical narratives students get, especially white students. Many states, frankly, have frameworks that just don't adequately represent the contributions, the struggles, the full experiences of Black Americans. And this leads directly to a profound gap in understanding for many students, particularly white students. Just think about it for a second. Textbooks often downplay or really oversimplify critical events and figures. Subjects like slavery itself or the civil rights movement or even contemporary issues around racial injustice, they might get minimal coverage or worse, get framed in ways that actually detract from their real significance. So naturally, this limited exposure can create misunderstandings or even reinforce biases that already exist among white students who just haven't had a comprehensive education on it.
That's a really powerful point. It's not just a gap, it actually reinforces the biases. Do the sources give any specific examples of how textbooks might downplay or oversimplify?
Yes, our deep dive into the material uncovered examples where, say, the absolute horrors of slavery are maybe reduced to just a few paragraphs, or the agency of enslaved people in resisting and fighting back is largely just left out. Similarly, the civil rights movement might be presented as, a simple story about a couple of charismatic leaders, instead of showing it as the broad grassroots movement it was, with diverse strategies, internal debates, the whole complex picture. And what's more, teaching often centers on a Eurocentric narrative of history, which frequently just neglects the extensive contributions of Black individuals. This results in a historical picture that's missing essential context, missing key perspectives, and that affects students' ability to appreciate how multifaceted American history really is. These educational gaps don't just shape understanding, they can actually perpetuate systemic ignorance and racial tension. It really underscores the need for educational reforms, including better, more comprehensive training for teachers, if we want to foster a more informed and empathetic society.
Moving beyond the classroom, the media obviously plays a huge role in shaping how we perceive history. And what's fascinating is how it can be this double-edged sword. It can illuminate, or it can, unfortunately, perpetuate those same stereotypes. It really shows its power.
It's absolutely true. On the one hand, you have films and documentaries that can be incredibly powerful educational tools. Works like 12 Years a Slave or Selma. They offer these deep, sometimes visceral insights into the Black experience. They can foster real awareness, real empathy in audiences. They can make history feel immediate, alive, forging an emotional connection that sometimes just reading facts can't achieve. But then, conversely, media portrayals that lean into negative stereotypes can seriously hinder understanding. When you constantly see certain tropes like criminalization or portraying Black people solely as victims, these narratives can, sadly, skew perceptions. They limit a comprehensive view of the much broader, more complex historical reality. News outlets especially play a big part here. They can shape narratives through maybe selective coverage or sensationalism, often focusing on isolated incidents instead of providing that broader context of systemic issues affecting Black communities, which just highlights how critical it is for media producers to aim for accuracy and depth, and for us as audiences to really engage critically with the content we're consuming.
But it's not just about what you learn from TV or in a textbook. What we found in our research kept coming back to this idea. Personal interactions, engaging directly with Black culture, are incredibly important for reaching a true understanding, moving beyond the academic or the mediated view.
Absolutely. Yeah, understanding Black history truly seems to require more than just book knowledge. It really involves personal interactions that can significantly shift perspectives, especially for white individuals. Things like friendships with Black individuals, actually participating in community events, engaging in cultural exchanges, whether that's through music, art, literature, food. These serve as really vital ways to learn experientially. These lived experiences, they foster empathy. They provide nuanced insights into both challenges and triumphs that, frankly, no textbook alone can fully capture. Friendships, often act as that first real point of personal contact with diverse cultural narratives. By forming genuine relationships, you can gain insight into daily realities, challenges, triumphs faced by people in the Black community. This direct engagement leads to more meaningful conversations, helps uncover personal stories, shared histories, allowing for a much more nuanced grasp of the bigger socio-political picture. It's often through these relationships that people can really start to recognize the impact of systemic racism and see its historical roots in America. And, immersing yourself in cultural traditions, supporting Black-owned businesses, these actions reinforce solidarity, they challenge preconceived ideas, help confront biases, and ultimately they lead to richer, more informed discussions.
Okay, so if we connect all this to the bigger picture, it becomes really clear that this deeply ingrained issue, systemic racism, profoundly influences how history gets understood, particularly for white Americans. It's almost like this persistent undercurrent, right? Influencing what gets taught, which stories get prioritized. That seems like critical lens for this whole deep dive.
It really is. Systemic racism isn't just about individual prejudice, though that's part of it. It's more about those ingrained institutional practices and cultural norms. Think about historical redlining, preventing Black home ownership, or ongoing disparities in school funding, or even subtle ways Black cultural achievements might be minimized. These things create and reinforce inequality, often without someone consciously intending to be racist. And this pervasive issue deeply shapes how history, especially Black history, is understood. So, white Americans might primarily encounter a narrative that's already been shaped by these systemic biases, leading to a limited and often inaccurate understanding of historical events concerning Black people. You see it in education, for example. In many schools, the curriculum around Black history is often, fragmented or just glossed over. This naturally perpetuates a lack of understanding among white students. Systemic racism basically molds how histories are presented, often emphasizing narratives that align with the dominant culture while pushing the experiences and contributions of Black individuals to the margins. This kind of selective storytelling results in a generational knowledge gap, really, where white individuals grow up without a truly comprehensive grasp of the struggles and achievements that define Black history in America. And this ignorance, it doesn't just sit there. It fuels misconceptions, stereotypes. It fosters a cultural climate where having honest conversations about race and systemic inequities becomes incredibly difficult. It leads to misunderstandings about why present-day disparities exist, because the historical roots get trivialized or ignored.
Right. So, given this profound understanding gap shaped by so many complex factors, education, media, systemic racism itself, what can you, the listener, actually do to learn more, to truly engage with Black history in a meaningful way? The material we studied offers some really concrete, actionable steps.
Absolutely.
If you want to genuinely deepen your understanding, you can definitely take a proactive approach. Engaging with a variety of resources is key. A solid reading list is a great start for historical context and building empathy. Our material suggests classics like The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. It really explores the complexities of race relations. And also Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is this powerful letter to his son about being Black in America. Both offer invaluable perspectives that can really challenge standard narratives and promote deeper empathy. Beyond reading, films and documentaries are, as we said, powerful visual storytelling tools. Documentaries like 13th by Ava DuVernay, which dissects historical and systemic inequalities, or I Am Not Your Negro, based on James Baldwin's work, they present compelling narratives. These visual mediums can really convey the emotional weight of Black history and its ongoing impact in a way that often resonates very deeply. Podcasts, too, offer a super accessible way to learn. Shows like 1619 from the New York Times give listeners these really in-depth explorations of significant events, often bringing untold stories and overlooked perspectives to light. You can easily integrate listening into your daily routine, which makes learning feel more convenient, more immersive. And then beyond consuming media, actually participating in community events, maybe workshops or discussions focused on race and history that can facilitate deeper understanding and build connections right in your local area. Engaging in these conversations allows for exchanging ideas, hearing personal stories, and promoting a more inclusive view of American history. By actively seeking out and using these kinds of resources, you can really contribute to building a more informed society, one that truly recognizes and values the full spectrum of American history.
So when we circle back to that initial question, do white people in America truly understand Black history? It's clear the answer is incredibly complex. As we've explored throughout this deep dive, the lack of comprehensive knowledge among many white Americans about the profound experiences, the achievements, the struggles of Black individuals and communities, it really highlights a significant understanding gap. And this gap, unfortunately, often works to reinforce systemic racism and hinders our collective progress toward genuine racial equity.
Indeed. What our deep dive really brings into focus is that bridging this gap isn't simple. It requires action on multiple fronts. Education is key, both formal schooling and that personal exploration we talked about. Open dialogue is also crucial, but specifically dialogue where white Americans make a conscious effort to actively listen to the lived realities of Black individuals and, importantly, are willing to confront their own biases. And maybe most importantly, active allyship. That's not just a passive belief. It requires real participation, a genuine commitment to advocating for racial justice and equity.
So as you reflect on everything we've discussed in this deep dive, maybe consider this. How can truly appreciating the ongoing resilience of Black Americans looking beyond just the historical struggles reshape how you engage with current conversations about race and equality?